just most recent memory, first impressions of the movie Jujutsu Kaisen 0. So I would consider myself more into anime than David is, although David has either, by choice or by near force, been out to see.
I've seen 2 anime shows.
2 anime.
And about probably like 15 movies at this point.
Yeah, because he's definitely more of a movie guy. I would say my ratio of shows versus movies is about the same, like opposite, flip-flopped of his. I've seen a lot of shows, and I've tried to go out and see as many movies. But I will say I've seen about as many anime movies as David has. So we're both relatively familiar with how the format goes. I would say, I'm probably. It's interesting. We're like two sides of one coin because, you're not a huge anime guy. So a lot of the idiosyncrasies and the little anime isms that you get used to if you watch a lot, I'm used to. David probably like recognizes them, but isn't, entirely willing to just like look over them, this movie definitely has a lot more of those in it than other movies we've seen. I think particularly because it's based on a show. Like the Demon Slayer movie did the same thing, where we had like exaggerated reactions and big features. But I want to hear your first impressions, because we've kind of been sitting on this and we have not talked about it since we got out of the movie as much. So I want to hear your first impressions of Jujutsu Kaisen 0.
Yeah, like those anime isms that you're talking about. I think the one I hate the most is inner monologuing, because my hero does that every like 3 seconds.
Yeah,
and this movie certainly did it a lot too. And I think we're very much on opposite ends on this movie.
I would say so,
because I was not a big fan of it. Not gonna lie.
That's unfortunate.
Now this is coming from someone who has not seen the show. But you also mentioned before we went to see the movie that this movie was written before the show.
Yeah.
And it's meant for people who are fans of the show, but also new people. And as a new person, I found that it was not exactly very welcoming. Because, the first thing was the panda. Now, you explained the panda to me already.
Yeah.
How it was an experiment that someone did or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, what did the movie do to explain that to me?
The movie did nothing.
Nothing. There was one single line where I think it was probably like the teacher or something going through all the 3 main characters.
Yeah.
And there was one line for each of them. And I saw like experiment for the panda, but that was it. And this is the only talking animal in the movie, and I was like, okay, so there's just a talking panda.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, is the only talking animal in the show too. So talking animals are not common in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen.
So that was kind of annoying. And the main character, like we saw the subbed version.
Yeah. And
I don't know. I thought that the voice, he did not sound like a high schooler.
Did he sound older than a high schooler?
No. When he was talking normally, it sounded like he was like probably like 7 years old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a little strange, definitely in the world of anime at least, because a lot of times, it's especially prevalent in like male characters or like male presenting characters where, like lower voices are more common, but they shouldn't be, right? Because like high schoolers don't generally have like super deep, low resonating voices. So normally it's really weird to, we get used to it, but like in real life it's abnormal. Like we went with to school in middle school with a guy who will remain nameless. I don't think he's gonna ever listen to this, but like he was a built dude, like 6th grade, super tall, just the broadest shoulders I've ever seen. Football player.
I forgot that guy even existed. Wow. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like that was strange. But in anime, that's just every that's just every character. Like most of the male characters that we're supposed to be rooting for and following in anime, they look just like this guy, super built and like jacked. And if you watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you know exactly what I mean. But yeah, so in this movie, his voice is higher, which like is a welcome surprise. But I did notice like this particular performance was very high. I appreciated it as someone who, you know, it kind of usurped my expectations. That's not the word I was looking for, but yeah. And then what did you think? Tell me about the animation and like the action scenes.
Well, those are all fine. But I guess most of my problems stemmed towards the last part of the movie. Because with the few things that I've seen, like especially with My Hero, like you said, whenever you hear like a theme song or some song playing during an action scene, that's when it's supposed to be like the most impactful, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like the badass scene.
Yeah.
And then the finale of this movie, whenever I do not know names, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to refer to them as the main character and the main bad guy. They were having their big battle at the end. And the music comes on for about 5 seconds, and then it stops, and then they talk more, and then it did like 3 times where like they had a different song on, they fought for a couple seconds, and then stopped, more monologuing, and I was like, okay, well, this is very anticlimactic. And then the other part where the teacher, he was in some other part, like doing fighting another war. Yeah. And then these random characters that I haven't even seen the movie show up, like the blonde guy.
Yeah.
Which we talked about, but like he shows up and there's a couple other characters and he has a theme song playing and I was like, who are you and why am I supposed to care about this? And you were like, oh, well, these are characters from the show.
Yeah, and that was, as I was watching, I could kind of sense that it was alienating David a little bit because it's all of the and I haven't seen the actual show in a really long time, but it was all of the class, you know, the second years and the first years from the other Jujutsu school, and then a bunch of the teachers, and I forgot. I feel so bad because I was literally just watching a video with that voice actor yesterday. It starts with an N. But the blonde guy with the glasses who is Gojo's best friend, because Gojo bothers him all the time. The one that uses like the it's not ratio, but there for a split second you could see like they explain his ability in the show. It was fan service essentially, and fan service to someone who, you know, isn't a fan of the show doesn't do anything except for, you know, just kind of pad out the actual movie. I looked at it from the perspective that, like, you know, it's Suguro is the main bad guy and he declared war. Spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen 0, by the way. Oh my I'm so sorry it took so long. So yeah, him declaring war on Jujutsu High essentially. Yeah, I thought about it like this. Like in any movie that has like a war scene, like you're gonna see, you know, random soldiers fighting other random soldiers from both sides, and so yeah, as a fan of the show, I really appreciated it, and I honestly think that was probably the biggest difference, because like the chapter or the one shot that the movie is based on is, I was excited because it's actual canon and it takes place before the series is supposed to start, and it was actually written to do so. And so I was excited for David because I was like, okay, this is going to be a cool introduction to the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. And I hope there was like, did you like any parts of the movie? Like particularly like any parts?
I mean, I guess the whole concept is pretty cool, and the imagery, like some of the cursed things were kind of cool looking,
like the actual curses themselves, or like the cursed like energy. Because I've always liked the way that cursed energy looks in the show, where like, for example, the main character, his last name starts with an O. God, I don't want to butcher any names, but the main guy, when he is told to imbue some of Rika's cursed energy into a sword, I hope her name is Rika. Oh my God. Like that effect is cool when they put like the cursed energy. It almost looks like it's on a different like plane of existence, you know, like yeah. So I'm glad you like the concept, because like if anything, I'm sort of hoping this kind of opens up the idea for you to like start the show. I know you're not like a big show guy, but yeah, I felt almost entirely opposite of what David felt, and I again, I think a huge part of it is like I've seen the show, so I was familiar with the world already, and that was a cool extension of the world, and getting to see the main character after he gets name dropped in the show, and you don't see him actually, is very interesting to me. So overall, I really liked it. I'm definitely gonna if I had a choice, are we gonna come up with a ranking system?
I don't know, maybe, but I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay. David's got more.
I'm not done yet. So yeah, most of that I was talking about was pretty much for the last part of the movie. But honestly, the movie as a whole, it felt like an entire season cut down into a movie.
That makes sense.
Because you have the main character who was a total wuss in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he gets to this school, and then it cuts to like 3 months later when he's already trained, which was fine, I guess, because like I said, he was really annoying in the first part. All right, and then it cuts to, months later, he's already trained, he's fighting and everything. And then at some point in the movie, the main bad guy shows up, and he's like, oh, this war is going to take place on December 24th.
Yeah.
And then it immediately cuts to December 24th.
Yeah, it really does.
Due to the battle.
Yeah.
And it just felt like super, super rushed to get like a whole year's worth of this character's life cut down into an hour and a half.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we haven't mentioned is we actually showed up to the movie a little late. So fun fact, I didn't know this movie was starting exactly at 4:40. I needed to get gas before the movie started, and we got there, it sat in the theater at maybe like 4:53. Movie had already been on. So, main character wakes up in the execution room. Gojo is talking to him. We ended up looking the synopsis of the plot up later, so we kind of grasped what happened. But I honestly feel like that attributed to the short runtime. Not that it wasn't entirely responsible, but the movie definitely felt like it went by really, really, really quickly. And a lot of the stuff with like Maki and Inumaki that like kind of get glossed over in this movie, they get touched on more in the show. So like, I guess standard anime movie fare is you don't really give a whole lot of exposition. Like in the My Hero movies, like you get the intro every time that's like 80% of the world's population has quirks, blah blah blah. But typically, like, you try not to do touch on things that are already touched on in the show. But this movie has to do it a little bit differently because the source material has to also go through the same paces. But because of that, as a fan, I appreciated that they kind of went through it really quickly. But as someone who hasn't ever seen the show, it's like, what was that again? I was like, there's a lot of information that is like explained well enough for someone who's familiar with the source material, but it kind of just, things just happen one after another.
Yeah. I also do not buy that our main guy was able to beat the main bad guy so quickly. Like, this kid has been training for a couple months.
Yeah.
Versus a guy has like a whole like collection of these curse things.
Yeah. It is they kind of they give him I wouldn't even say like plot armor, but they explain that he comes from he's a descendant of one of the, top 3 sorcerers in Jujutsu, sorcery history. So it's like it's just a gene thing. But yeah, it did kind of rush through all.
I don't buy that at all. It's like that one AV Gen clip where it's like, if you were related to Michael Jordan, would you automatically be good at basketball? No, it's not how it works.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, basketball also isn't magic, so who knows? Maybe maybe it works a little bit differently in sorcery. So,
but yeah, man, just. Yeah, basically, going into the movie blind doesn't work. Maybe
we can give it another chance, because this is what happened with Broly. Because I introduced David to Broly before he watched the show, and I don't know if you felt similarly to that movie as you do with this movie. Because like Broly does a pretty good job at kind of setting up where all of the characters are coming from. And they give a lot of attention to Broly before the fight even starts. Anyway, maybe there's an opportunity to like watch the show and then come back to this movie at some point. Cause I really do think if you do like the concept of the show and like the characterization, like, plus there's a dub for the show out that I would be honestly willing to go through again. Cause I watched it in Japanese first. So, we don't have to decide that now, but what we do have to do now is, between, watch it, rent it, and never see it again. I would give this a watch it. I would recommend to watch it. Or maybe not even never see again, but like, don't see.
Well, if only those 3 options, don't see.
Don't see. Okay.
If you have not seen the show, don't see this movie.
That is fair.
In which case, why are you listening to this? Wow, we just spoiled everything.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
I'm assuming you've seen this movie already.
Yeah, and we'll give a timestamp in. I guess we can't give a timestamp in the description on Spotify. That's okay. So if you haven't seen the movie, hopefully, yeah. I don't know how we're gonna do this, but that's okay. There was a spoiler warning earlier, and that's all we can do at the moment.